If you want to know how Jaws almost killed the entire town of Amity, including the deaths that were taken out of the movie, then stick around to the end of this video. Jaws is the beast from the sea that rarely surfaced in his own movie, but came out slightly more in the novel, oftentimes leaving a trail of blood and flesh in his wake. He was the nightmare laying siege physically and mentally to the small town of Amity and their year-round residents. Jaws author Peter Benchley stated that he could never write Jaws today or really even demonize an animal. Since Jaws is a shark, we're gonna look at what makes him the demon that Benchley originally intended. So in today's episode, we'll attempt to analyze the shark's impact on Amity through a psychological lens. To understand the full threat of the shark's occupation, we've got to start by understanding the town. Amity is one of the summer communities on Long Island's southern shore. The population of its year-round residents is about 1,000, boosting to 10,000 in the summer. The summertime residents are important for keeping Amity a thriving community during the winter, since they mainly consist of lawyers and bankers who are looking to get away for 12 weeks. There is this logic that all of the full-time residents follow, where everyone does what they can to maintain a good image for the town. That way, it always appears to be a favorable place to spend the summers. This is done to produce a wealthy summer season to get through the winter, where even after the best summers, 3 of every 10 families go on relief. Due to this understanding, the police chief, Martin Brody, and the editor of the local paper, Harry Meadows, will filter the news to ensure that Amity appears attractive to the summer people who subscribe to the local paper. At the same time, the understanding roots out anyone who is potentially dishonest in their work ethic. A few years before the novel, 2 brothers came to Amity to start running a carpentry business and originally earned a good reputation. After longtime residents discovered their use of inferior parts while charging for higher quality ones, the people of Amity made sure that it was impossible for them to run their business. This unspoken agreement is stated to root from a need to survive, meaning that 1 or 2 bad apples have to be tossed out as quickly as possible. If not, they could ruin the revenue for the entire town. The Amity Understanding is a portrayal of how local and traditional mindsets function within modern limitations. The peaceful nature of the community is interrupted when the shark appears in their waters. Measuring in at about 20 feet long, 4 feet wide at the snout, and an estimated weight of 5,000 to 6,000 pounds, Jaws is bigger than a large pickup truck. And this is slightly smaller than his film counterpart Bruce, who measures up to 25 feet. Jaws first emerges from the depths around 1 a.m. on June 16th, nearly a whole month before the movie. He's initially attracted to Amity's beaches by the vibrations of a late-night swimmer, Chrissie Watkins. Starting by making a wide circle around her, the water briefly surges up before settling back down. Being alerted to something, she pauses for a moment. Since she's already tired and a bit uneasy, she starts to hurry back to the shore. She initially believed that some coral or driftwood had scraped against her leg, but when she went down to reach for her foot, she has to reach higher and higher until her fingers found the nub of her bone. Screaming in panic, she starts thrashing for the shore. Taking his chance, Jaws dives down before ramming into her from below and tossing her out of the water. Clamping his mouth around her torso, he slams back down into the water in a shower of blood and scraps of flesh. This seems to be the point that Jaws develops a craving for human flesh, instead of, you know, just seals and fish and the Sunday deal at Long John Silver's. A normal shark might have spat her leg out because people are too bony and don't have the amount of fat content that sharks typically prefer. Typically, when sharks do go for people, it's because they're starving or just confuse the person for a seal, or you know, the Sunday deal at Long John. Rather than that, Jaws becomes the monster of nightmares by deciding the waters of Amity are now part of its home range. Adding this stop to its migration route probably means that it'll stick around for anywhere from 1 to 3 months. In doing this, he becomes the harbinger of the residents' worst fears and the revealer of their darkest secrets. Jaws becomes known as an unforgiving overlord, as the gatekeeper of Amity. The initial response from Mayor Vaughn and Meadows was to keep it quiet to ensure a good summer revenue, despite Chief Brody's insistence to close the beach. Their logic to keep them open was that the attack was probably a one-time thing, since sharks don't usually stay in one place for that long. Chief Brody originally objects, arguing with Mayor Vaughn that he has the interest of public safety in mind. However, he seems to be the only one for closing the beaches. With his job threatened by the mayor, he concedes and allows the beaches to stay open. The offensive nature of Vaughn's position appears to be justified based on the Amity Understanding. They still need the summer to go well enough for the town to survive through the winter. Meanwhile, Chief Brody's position initially seems to come from his fear of the ocean and any water that's deeper than his shoulders. In this sense, Jaws is the physical embodiment of Chief Brody's fear of the demons under the water. The next time Jaws surfaces is on Monday, June 20th, when 6-year-old Alex Kintner goes on a swim in a small raft. The raft Alex is on is small enough for him to use it similarly to a boogie board or a surfboard. He doesn't notice the current carrying him further from the shore until he's about 40 yards away. With his legs splashing in the water, the shark hones in on the movement it stirs. Jaws follows the vibration until he's about 20 feet away. Then there's a brief moment where he loses the signal, passing directly under Alex as the boy takes a break. It's not until Alex starts kicking again that Jaws locks in on the source of the movement. He propels himself almost straight out of the water, knocking the child and the raft into his mouth. Now, I tried doing this at the Taco Bell drive-thru by just sticking my head out the window and flooring it, but it didn't go quite how I imagined. Unlike my taco, Alex's death was quick and over before the boy could scream. The only part of him not swallowed was his legs. As Jaws flops back into the ocean, Alex's father on shore notices the movement. When he goes to Mrs. Kintner, the realization takes a moment to set in. Together, they go to the police station to report the incident. Unfortunately for Amity, 2 reporters from the New York Times and Newsday, respectively, happen to be at the beach. They both inhabit the police station after the event, trying to get information to publish a story. This is one of the worst situations for Amity. If the story got out, their 4th of July weekend would be a bust and potentially force the town into a massive decline over the winter. With money already tight in most households, a poor summer could lead to the townspeople buying cheaper goods, resulting in declining tax revenue, which would make it difficult to effectively maintain public works like gas and electricity. The domino effect could lead to longtime residents moving out and turning Amity into a ghost town. In the middle of this exchange, another cop named Patrolman Hendricks bursts in, frantically informing Chief Brody of another attack, and this one would be too gruesome to include in the movie. After the patrolman's outburst, Chief Brody is silently thankful that the reporters failed to notice the slip of Hendricks' tongue with the word another. Hendricks is the most up to speed on the shark attacks aside from the chief, so a massive slip up like that could have jeopardized the reputation of the town's authorities. Urging him to continue, Hendricks describes how he went to the beach for the first time in years and heard a surfer scream as he was repeatedly knocked down. He explained to Chief Brody that blood was flying all over the place. The fish kept coming back and hitting him again and again. Hendricks had tried to go and help the man, reaching waist-deep water, but by the time he was able to grab the man's hand, his arm fell away from his shoulder. This type of attack pattern is generally used by sharks for larger prey like elephant seals, which can fight back and do damage to their skin. The idea is to stun the prey, making them easier to kill and consume. We can only imagine that the shark felt somewhat intimidated by the sheer size of the man's surfboard, since boards usually range from 6 to 7 feet long. This surfer incident on top of the Kintner boy causes Chief Brody to order the immediate closure of all beaches to ensure public safety. Sounds all too familiar. When discussing the situation with Mayor Vaughn, the two decide to hunt down the shark before it can do any further damage. On Tuesday, June 24th, the local fisherman, Ben Gardner, was sent out on his boats to look for Jaws. Chief Brody spends an hour watching his boats, the Flicka, with binoculars until Hendricks shows up to see how things are going. Expressing his concern, the chief decides to head to the marina to borrow a boat with Hendricks. When they reach Gardner's boat, they can't find any sign of him. They look around and discover that the radio is still on, and the boat is anchored in at least 100 feet of water. The only signs of what could have happened were some scraped paint and what could have been a bite mark on the hull. Noticing something in one of the punctures, the chief lifts Hendricks over the side. When he's pulled back into the boat, Hendricks reveals a 2-inch wide shark tooth. The only conclusion they can come up with is that Jaws got a hold of Ben somehow. It's a reasonable one too, as there have been documented instances of great white sharks attacking fishing boats. It's a bit unclear why Jaws would attack the boat. I mean, it could be that it saw the dropping anchor as a threat, or possibly that he smelled fish and was curious about if he could eat the boat or not. When sharks are on the prowl for food, they usually take a bite first to see if they like it, and if it doesn't taste like something in their usual diet, then they usually just leave it. But if this impact knocked Ben into the water, Jaws might have just taken that as his reward instead. Remember, this particular shark seems to have actually developed a taste for humans. By now, Jaws knows a few things about the waters around Amity. First is that there's always food around, even on the boats, and people count as a tasty food source. With Ben Gardner's death, we're introduced to the ichthyologist Matt Hooper. Basically, Hooper studies sharks and frequently dives with them. He's described as being clean-shaven, tanned, lean, and in his mid-20s. So basically nothing like the bearded description in the film, because supposedly having a big beard like that can get in the way while diving. Another differing point in the film is that Chief Brody has an immediate dislike towards Hooper. While they're on good terms on the screen, their novel depictions frequently get into arguments over almost everything. In the wake of Hooper's arrival and Ben's death, Hooper begins using the Flicka to patrol the waters. With the beaches still closed, he's able to test the water and study the marine life in hopes of finding out why Jaws is there. Unfortunately for Hooper, he doesn't run into the shark after spending an entire week studying the area. So So when he attends the meeting of the selectmen, Mayor Vaughn and Chief Brody, he confirms that they should be clear to reopen the beaches for the 4th of July weekend. He also notes that the water is getting too warm for a great white to be there. The chief doesn't want anything reopened, claiming that they don't know if the shark actually left or not. Despite his initial feeling, the selectmen and the mayor point out that the town is dying. The past 2 weeks have had a major impact on local businesses, forcing many to have sales just to scrape in a little bit of profits. With the beaches open for the holiday weekend, Chief Brody sets Hendricks up on the public beach, Hooper out in the Flicka, and himself on the private beaches to keep watch for any signs of the shark. On July 3rd, the chief encountered a family trespassing on the private beaches. In their conversation, he discovers that Amity is getting a reputation for having a killer shark inhabiting the waters. The family came to the beach hoping to get a glimpse, and this was the exact opposite of what Amity wants to be known for. While having a man-eating shark will keep a lot of tourist money away, there are some people who would travel out of their way to see these interesting creatures, even if that means risking their life. What? Why are you looking at me like that? However, the town would end up nearly completely abandoned before shark spotting would become its main point of interest. The bad luck in Amity doesn't seem to run out. All it takes to stir up a sense of unease is for a young boy to go swimming on a bet. And the shark would not be Brody's only worry, with a news reporter also prowling the scene of this summertime getaway. Brody keeps an eye out for the boy as he goes out. It doesn't take long for Hooper to see something in the water and quickly turn the boat around. Radioing Hooper, the chief tells him about the boy so that he can move the boat closer. What they don't know is that Jaws was hanging around underneath the Flicka for most of the day. The change in the boat's motor brings the shark to life, causing it to follow the boat towards shallower water and towards the boy. Chief Brody moves into the water a bit, getting knocked back by a wave. As the boy reaches chest-deep water and tries moving further towards the shore, the fin of the shark appears out of the water behind him. Between the chief and the shark, the boy moves a little bit faster because he knows something is wrong. In a stroke of luck, Chief Brody gets the boy first and Jaws retreats deeper into the water. While this scene is tense, it does display the natural limitations of the shark. Since he has to continuously move forward in order to breathe, he has to avoid accidentally beaching himself over a mouthful of food. So the shallower areas were essentially off limits. Forced to close the beaches again, Amity has to come up with another solution. In a last-ditch effort, they call in former war veteran turned shark hunter named Sam Quint, a man who takes the cliche swears like a sailor to the extreme. I'd love for him to meet our cab driver from It. With a new ally came a new boat, and even with a bigger boat, Jaws was unafraid to back down from a challenge.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
On Quint's boat, Orca, they manage to encounter Jaws a total of 3 times. The first time is only a brief passing. The second time, Hooper hops into his shark cage to see Jaws underwater and take some photos. When he goes in, he takes an underwater weapon in case Jaws gets too close. On the initial pass, Jaws swims close enough to the cage for Hooper to run his hand along the side. The interaction is peaceful until the sounds of Quint firing shots into the water disturb the scene. Once this happened, Jaws swims out a bit before ramming himself into the cage. He manages to pry the bars apart with his continued ramming, the same technique used against elephant seals and more dangerous prey. It seems that Jaws didn't truly feel threatened until the shots were fired at him. The disturbance agitated him to some degree, and he associated it with the strange cage floating nearby. The Hooper in the novel isn't as fortunate as his film counterpart. Before he's able to use the weapon, the shark bites down on his torso. In a display of graphic details, Jaws jumps out of the water, Hooper's legs hanging out of one side of his mouth and his head and arms out the other. I guess Mrs. Jaw never taught her son any proper manners at the dinner table. With Hooper dead, Quint declares that this hunt is no longer a matter of money. Though he never speaks the reason, it seems clear that he's developed a burning desire to kill it, even if he has to do it alone. Their final encounter with Jaws turns into a storied hunt that the novel has led up to. Once they get to a specific area closer to the shore, Jaws surfaces as if waiting for them. Within a half hour, Quint and Brady manage to hook 3 harpoons into him. One by his fin, another near his stomach, and one in the head, just above the right eye. During this, Jaws attempts to sink their boat by ramming into it, even taking a bite to shake the boat. Eventually, Jaws resorts to trying to swim away for nearly 3 hours, dragging the vessel with him as he goes. When the barrels stop moving, Quint takes them in close to lasso Jaws' tail and attempt to hoist him up on the winch. But Jaws turns in a last-ditch effort to escape and crashes onto the deck, and the impact is enough to start sinking the boat. In a mad fit of fury, Quint takes the harpoon and stabs the shark in the gut, deep enough for blood to cover his entire hand. When Jaws rolls back into the water, Quint's leg gets caught in the rope tethered to the harpoon and he's pulled overboard. Jaws is simply trying to get back into the water just in order to breathe, but it causes Quint to end up drowning from his own slip-up. Pretty brutal way to go, but not as much as the movie though. Roll that shit. Luckily for Chief Brody, he doesn't need a gun or an oxygen tank to save himself. In the end, Jaws is merely a mortal shark and dies from his injuries just before getting the chance to take a bite out of Brody. The last we see of Jaws is him sinking back towards the depths of the ocean. In the end, Jaws terrorized the people of Amity and their summer visitors for nearly an entire month. The 6 victims taken were not the only way that the creature wreaked havoc on citizens, though. It potentially ruined the entire summer season economy, making the upcoming winter more difficult. While the film shows Jaws as a ruthless killer, the novel reveals a more realistic depiction of a shark, with some tendencies that we can analyze and understand, and others that can still not be explained. Hopefully this analysis helps add a layer of reality behind the ocean-dwelling terror that is Jaws. And by the way, let me know what other creatures you'd like to see covered here on Horror History, or what franchise you'd like to see me take on. Remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we both survive.